I'm 82 years old. My mother died 20 years ago, and I still think about her every single day. Not because of what she said, but because of what I never asked. There are 5 questions I wish I had asked my mother while she was alive. 5 questions that would have changed everything. And I know the answers now, because after she died, I found them. In her diary, in her letters, in the things she left behind. But I found them too late to tell her that I finally understood. Too late to say, "Mom, I see you now." My name is Thomas, and this is about the 5 questions I didn't ask, and the answers I found when it was too late. Let me tell you about my relationship with my mother. Her name was Grace Eleanor Morrison, born 1921, died 2004. She was my mother for 61 years, and I never really knew her. That sounds impossible, doesn't it? How can you not know someone who raised you, who was there your entire life? But that's the thing about mothers, especially mothers of her generation. They become invisible, not physically, but as people. You see them as Mom, the person who made dinner, who did laundry, who asked about your day. But you don't see them as Grace, the person who had dreams, who had regrets, who had a whole life before you existed. And I never asked. I never asked her about her life, her thoughts, her feelings. I just took her for granted. She was always there, always available, always Mom. And I assumed she always would be. In 2003, my mother got sick, pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctor said maybe 6 months. I remember sitting in the hospital room when he told us. My mother, small, fragile, 82 years old, just nodded, like she'd been expecting it. And I realized sitting there, I had no idea what she was thinking. Was she scared, angry, relieved? I didn't know, because I'd never asked her how she felt about anything important. For 61 years, I'd known my mother, and I didn't know her at all. She died 4 months later, June 17th, 2004. I was holding her hand, and in those final weeks, I wanted so badly to ask her things, real things, but I was afraid. Afraid it was too late. Afraid she'd wonder why I never asked before. Afraid of what I'd find out. So I didn't ask. And then she was gone, and I'll never know. Except I do know, because she left the answers behind. 3 weeks after the funeral, I went to clean out her apartment. She'd lived alone for 15 years, since my father died in 1989. Small 1-bedroom, modest, clean, very her. I was going through her dresser, sorting clothes, deciding what to donate, and in the bottom drawer, under her sweaters, I found a box. A shoebox, old, worn, tied with a ribbon. Inside were letters, diary entries, photographs, things I'd never seen, things she kept private her whole life. And as I read them, I realized here were the answers to questions I never asked. Here was my mother, not Mom, but Grace, a whole person I never knew. I sat on the floor of that empty apartment, and I read for 4 hours, and I cried, because I finally knew her, and it was too late to tell her that I understood. These are the 5 questions I wish I'd asked, and the answers I found. Question 1. What did you want to be when you were young, before life happened? I never asked my mother about her dreams. I assumed she'd always wanted to be a wife and mother, because that's what she was. But in her diary I found this entry, written in 1938. She was 17 years old. I'm going to be a teacher. Miss Henderson says I have a gift for it. She says I could go to teachers' college, study literature, maybe even write someday. Mother says it's a waste. I'll just get married anyway. Father says we can't afford college for a girl. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to find a way. She never did. She married my father in 1941. I was born in 1942. She was 21 years old, and her dreams ended. I found another entry, 1945. She was 24. I see my old classmates sometimes, the ones who went to college. They talk about books and ideas. I have nothing to say to them anymore. I love Thomas, but sometimes I look at him and think, you're the reason I never left this town. I was 3 years old when she wrote that, and I never knew. I never knew she'd wanted to teach. I never knew she'd wanted to write. I never knew that every time she looked at me, part of her saw the life she didn't get to live. If I'd asked, she might have told me. She might have said, I wanted to be a teacher. And I could have said, you would have been wonderful. And maybe that would have meant something to her. But I never asked, and she never told. And now I know she spent 60 years carrying that dream like a ghost. Question 2. What was the hardest thing you ever had to do? I never asked my mother about her struggles. I assumed her life was easy, simple, uncomplicated, because from my perspective it looked that way. But in her letters I found one she'd written to her sister, never sent, written in 1952. Dear Helen, I haven't told anyone this, not even Frank. I can't. Last week I stood in the kitchen holding a bottle of pills, and I thought I could just take them all, and it would be over. Thomas was at school. Frank was at work. The house was quiet. I stood there for 20 minutes, pills in my hand. I put them back. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm a coward. Maybe because Thomas needs his mother. But Helen, I'm so tired. So tired of pretending I'm happy. Tired of being invisible. Tired of this life I didn't choose. I was 10 years old when she wrote that, and I had no idea. My mother was suicidal, and I never noticed. Because I was a child, yes, but also because I never asked, are you okay? Not then, not ever. I assumed she was fine, because she smiled, she made dinner, she asked about my homework, so she must be fine. But she wasn't, and if I'd asked, even as an adult, even years later, maybe she would have told me. Maybe she would have said, there were times I wanted to give up, and I could have said, I'm so glad you stayed. But I never asked, and she never told. And now I know she almost wasn't there, and I never thanked her for staying. Question 3. What do you wish you'd done differently? I never asked my mother about regrets, because I didn't want to hear that I might be one of them. But in her diary, I found an entry from 1970. She was 49 years old. I was 28. Thomas called today. He's getting married to Linda. I've met her twice. He asked if I could help with the wedding. I said yes. Of course I said yes. But what I wanted to say was, do you even know me? Do you know what I like, what I care about, what I think? He doesn't, and that's my fault. I raised him to need me, but not to know me. And now he's a man, and I'm just his mother, the person who helps with things. I wish I'd taught him to ask questions, to care about other people's inner lives, to see people as whole. But I didn't, because I was too busy being what everyone needed. She was right. I didn't know her, and it was her fault, and my fault, and nobody's fault, because that's what happened to women of her generation. They disappeared into their roles, and their children never thought to look for the person underneath. If I'd asked her, "What do you wish you'd done differently?" maybe she would have said, "I wish I'd been more than just mom." And I could have said, "Tell me who you are. I want to know." But I never asked. Question 4. What are you afraid of? I never asked my mother about her fears, except practical things. Are you warm enough? Do you have enough money? But never, what keeps you up at night? In her diary, the last entry, written 3 weeks before she died. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm 82. I've lived. What I'm afraid of is that I didn't matter. Not to the world. I know I was nobody important. But to Thomas, to my son. I'm afraid he'll remember me as the woman who made his meals, not as Grace, not as a person. I'm afraid I was invisible. And I'm afraid it's too late to be seen. She was right to be afraid, because I didn't see her. And now she's gone, and I can't tell her. I see you now, Mom. I finally see you. If I'd asked, "What are you afraid of?" she might have told me, and I could have said, "You matter. You matter so much." But I never asked, and she died afraid she'd been invisible, and she was right. Question 5. If you could do it all again, would you change anything? This is the question I'm most afraid to know the answer to, because it includes me. But in her letters I found one she wrote to me, dated 2002, 2 years before she died. She never sent it. Dear Thomas, I'm writing this even though I'll never give it to you. You asked me yesterday if I needed anything. I said no, I'm fine. But that's not true. What I need is for you to ask me a real question, just once. Not how are you, Mom, but who are you, Mom? I'm 81 years old, and my son has never asked me about my dreams, my regrets, my thoughts, my life. You see me as your mother, and I am. I was happy to be your mother. But I'm also Grace, and Grace had a whole life, and nobody knows about it. If I could do it all again, I would speak up. I would make you see me. But I can't change the past, and you are who you are. I love you, but I wish you'd loved all of me, not just the parts that served you. Mom. I found that letter 2 years after she died, and I realized she was trying to tell me. She was waiting for me to ask, and I never did. I'm 82 years old now, the age my mother was when she died. And I think about her every day, not the mother I remember, but the Grace I never knew. The 17-year-old who wanted to be a teacher, the 24-year-old who felt trapped, the 30-year-old who almost didn't stay, the 49-year-old who wished she'd been more than mom, the 81-year-old who died feeling invisible. These 5 questions, if I'd asked them, I would have known her, and she would have known I cared. But I didn't ask, and now I can't. But you can. If your mother is alive, call her today. Not tomorrow, today. And don't ask, how are you? Ask her something real. Ask her, what did you want to be when you were young? Listen to her answer. Really listen. Ask her, what was the hardest thing you ever had to do? And if she cries, let her. Be there. Ask her, what do you wish you'd done differently? And don't take it personally if the answer includes you. Ask her, what are you afraid of? And then tell her she matters, because she does. Ask her, if you could do it all again, would you change anything? And whatever she says, thank her for telling you. These 5 questions. They won't take long to ask, maybe an hour, maybe 2. But they'll give you something I don't have, a mother you actually know. Not just the role she played, but the person she is. I have my mother's diary now, and her letters, and her photographs. And I know her, finally. But she doesn't know that I know. She died thinking I never saw her. Don't let that happen to you. Your mother is a whole person, with dreams and fears and regrets and thoughts you've never heard. And someday she'll be gone, and if you haven't asked, you'll spend the rest of your life wishing you had. I'm 82 years old. My mother died 20 years ago. And I would give anything for one more conversation, one more chance to ask, Mom, who are you? Don't wait. Ask her now, while you still can.